On today's podcast, we are joined by the designers of one of my favorite board games. Welcome to Tabletop Shop. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tabletop Shop podcast. I am one of your hosts, Cody Pennington, and today it is my pleasure to be chatting with not one, but indeed two special guests. Our guests are skilled designers that have collectively added quite a few entries to the Board Game Geek database and are well known for creating just what happens to be one of my favorite games, In the Hall of the Mountain King. So please welcome Mr. J. Cormier and Mr. Graeme Jahns. Gentlemen. Hello.
Hi.
How are you guys doing today?
Super duper.
Excellent day.
That's a variety of answers right there. I like that. That's good stuff. How's Canada these days?
We're both in Vancouver, so it's wet.
It's yeah. I mean, everybody else is complaining about the cold, and it's like, yeah, it's reasonably seasonable.
I'm happy to see it cold. I'm down here in Oregon, and we just had a really weird summer that extended way too late. Then over the span of about 2 weeks, it just dropped down to like 40 degrees. That's how we like it.
I have to wear a hoodie and a spring jacket.
Oh no,
that's how cold it's getting.
That's crazy. Does it get pretty cold up there in Canada, at least on your side?
Everywhere but Vancouver.
Yeah, I mean there'd be a 2 weeks of snow and coldness in Vancouver, but there was one winter a couple of winters ago where I didn't wear my winter jacket at all the entire winter.
Okay, what can throw me off sometimes, this is on a side note, there's Vancouver, Washington, that I grew up not too far from, and then there's Vancouver, Canada, so it just gets all sorts of confusing. You're in Vancouver, Canada, right? Just making sure.
Correct.
Excellent. Let's hit it off with that then. Did you guys both grow up in Canada? Is that your official background?
Yeah, I grew up in Edmonton, Alberta, just one province over, and moved out to Vancouver about 20 years ago.
Okay, very nice.
And I, Jay Cormier, for those that can't see us because they don't know who's talking, I'm the Jay of the voices. I grew up in Ontario, Canada, and moved out here about 17 years ago into Vancouver land, and met Graeme as part of the game designer scene out here. We have a kind of a group of people called the Game Artisans of Canada.
Yeah,
GAC. And so I joined up with that organization that Graeme was a part of, and we all kind of got together, play tested a whole bunch. And then Graeme and I, for at least 10 years, if not longer, have taught. We alternate teaching at the Vancouver Film School. Part of their video game design program is a board game design class that they have to take. And so Graeme and I have been alternating teaching that. And then eventually we're like, because we talk so much about game design from a teaching perspective, and we play test each other's game all the time, we're like, we should make a game together.
We should make a game together.
So that was the culmination of In the Hall of the Mountain King then.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. we had actually tried one or two other projects that we worked on, but couldn't get any traction. And In the Hall of the Mountain King was the first one that everything just seemed to line up, and just we hit the ground running and never looked back. It just it fell together quite magically, I think.
Yeah, we're already into it, so we're taking over. You don't even have to ask questions. We'll just keep talking.
That's great. So much less work for me.
Yeah, we it was kind of a funny start because Graeme just kind of emailed me, I think, out of the blue, and just said he's like, I have an idea for a game, and it's a weird one because it's based on the song In the Hall of the Mountain King.
Yeah,
and he kind of goes on to explain the game a little bit, and I respond back, honestly, gonna saying that is my favorite song of all time. Like it's. If there was a theme song to my life, that would be playing as I just proceed through life, because everything in that song is always getting bigger and more exciting, and just like attention. It's just exciting. It's awesome. I love the song. And so I'm like, that's amazing. And I said, like, I read your notes of your ideas, but we could maybe incorporate that. But if we're doing a song based on that song, the game also has to crescendo, has to build and build. And the game has to have a snowball. The game has to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Mm-hmm. And from that concept, I think Graeme came up with the cascading option. Well, what if like you could do this and you play your trolls above each other and that cascades? And so by the end, you got this humongous thing. And then to me, that was like, yes, that's exactly like the song. Like so many people probably don't even know that this is literally based on the song.
That's where it came from. That is exactly it.
Man, I never would have guessed that. I was actually going to ask you guys about the Cascade system and what inspired that. And I would not have guessed that it comes just from the
Yep.
natural
It was
flow of the
yeah,
song itself.
it was literally the song.
Wow.
And for those that
Okay.
have never heard the song, you 100% have heard the song because it's used in so many movies, and
Mhm.
and it's, to me also, I find it a very funny song because it's used to juxtapose a chaos in a comedy scene.
Yeah.
Where it starts off all slow, do 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 do, and it starts getting bigger and bigger as the chaos starts to ensue. So it's always used. I've seen it used time and time again in comedy scenes.
I've got a
Even-
little
even
gem for you
commercials.
guys. Have you seen Johnny English Reborn?
Isn't that Johnny English is the Rowan Atkinson?
Rowan
right?
Atkinson.
Rowan Atkinson. Yeah, there's an end credit scene where Rowan Atkinson bakes an entire meal to the rhythm of in the Hall of the Mountain King.
Oh,
It's incredible.
okay.
No,
I gotta
haven't
go
seen
find that. I
Yeah.
gotta see if that's on
Yeah.
a streaming
that out.
stuff just to watch the end credits.
I'll go find the link and send it to you guys. It's
That'll
Awesome,
be great.
awesome.
All right. Well, here's the dealio. Mr. J, I know you have quite a bit of experience co-designing since you worked on so many games with Sen.
Right.
Grant, that's a little bit different for you, isn't it?
Yes. The only other two titles that I have published so far are both, solo designs. But I mean, as Jay said, we've been playtesting each other's games and tweaking and tuning each other's games for so long. It's like
Sure.
there might only be one name on the box, but there's like 20 other people that have helped tune it and tweak it to get it into the place where it is today.
So
You
what's
got
it like?
100% of those royalties.
That's right. I get all the royalties, but I
Hey.
acknowledge the fact that I didn't get it published alone.
So what's your process look like co-designing then? Are you ever butting heads, or is it pretty easy to kind of bounce off of each other with different ideas?
I tell you what, it's these days, it's literally, we both will start a sentence with, "This is stupid, but," and our process is we say the first thing that comes out, not because we think it's a great idea or because it's the answer, but we've gotten to this point where one of us will feed off of the other. So we just say the thing, and then that often sparks the other person to build on it or tweak it or improve it.
Because sometimes we see where that person's going, but the way they got there might be, stupid, or it's weird. But what you could do to get there is, what about this? And it just kind of feeds off each other. And sometimes it doesn't work with all partnerships. And
Sure.
you got to get to that point. And I'm fortunate to partner with people that I would consider friends. And so it's good to be friends first. I've never had to partner with somebody that isn't a friend. That would be a harder. Just to understand each other's communication style is a part of it. But we both have respect for each other, and we both contribute fairly and equally. We don't necessarily split it up like you do this and I'll do this per game. It's not like that. It's just like, hey, we're doing this. Hey, can you make some spell cards? I'm going to do this, and then I'll upload TTS, and then we're both kind of mixing and matching, and usually by the next day that we wake up, somebody's message each other with like a long, I had some other ideas when I was walking my dog.
So how often, I guess it was just within the Hall of the Mountain King, but did you actually work together in person since you're in the same area, as opposed to just emailing ideas back and forth?
In the Hall of the Mountain King was a lot of in person because all of it was in the before times.
Yeah. We had no TTS for that, which would have been probably saved us a lot of cutting of polyominoes.
Oh my gosh. Here's rule number 1. Never design a game with polyominoes because or at least a lot of polyominoes, because the process of cutting those out is exhausting. And I of course have multiple games of polyominoes in the works at the same time, so I don't even follow my own rule.
No.
I can relate a little bit to that pain. There's something of a prototype of a card game I'm working on, and we had to print out manually at home just because I'm very perfectionist about it. I want to physically hold the cards and play with them. And it was something like 250 cards we had to print out, and my wife was helping me just chop. I thought it was going to take maybe a couple hours. It ended up taking 2 days just to get everything out.
Yeah,
it's
a learning lesson I had early on in my game design career about how much time you put in effort before printing. And because I did that too, where I made a huge game, but we hadn't playtested it at all. We spent so much time printing and cutting and balancing and all this stuff, and took all this effort to finally make the physical prototype. And then our first playtest was a bomb. It absolutely bombed, and we never looked at that game again. That was a different game than with Graeme, but I think Graeme, you might have actually tested it because it was back in when Sen was came and visited in Vancouver, and I lived in New West.
Oh yeah,
anyway.
I'm sure I did play it.
Yeah,
that was
it
probably
terrible.
the time I showed up with the 9-foot prototype.
It was probably that time. That's right.
Okay.
Stories.
Yes,
Stories.
stories. Hey, stories are what we're here for. Just keep bringing them. Here's some more
Yeah.
stories. What got you guys into the hobby in the first place?
You know what's funny? So I don't know why, but I have been obsessed with playing board games ever since I was a little kid. And I just remember at being, even as a kid, trying to come up with silly games, and they were all terrible, right? Because they were all based on whatever I had played as a kid. Which, growing up in North America, it was mostly access to roll and rights, or not roll and rights, roll and moves. So like you're playing Monopoly, you're playing things, and it's just like all you're doing is you're rolling the dice and you're moving somewhere and you're doing what it says on the board.
It's a little bit too strategic for my taste.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, that's all you're doing. But like I would still make these games, and my mother, bless her, she would play every single one of them. And they were never very good, but it was just the fact that she was encouraging and supportive that I left it alone for a long time, probably a good dozen years. But it was when the Euro scene started back hitting North America, and it was like, being introduced to Settlers of Catan, then it was like, I can totally do this. I can revisit it. And so I picked it up again, and that was how I got back into it.
Yeah, but that said, you've been involved in games even throughout that time because you worked in video
That's
game
true.
world.
I do still work in video games as a day job, so.
That's right. I remember looking that up. That's quite the combination: video games and board game designers. It's a good nail to hang your hat on.
It's fun. Yeah.
That's just Graham. I don't do video game design.
You should. Or should you?
Oh, okay.
All right. How
I
about
teach
you,
it.
Jake?
Yeah, it's very similar in the sense that I always played games growing up, and I always loved game night with the family because it was just a fun experience. I designed a lot of little games, but I also love computer games. I had the Commodore 64, and I did so I love programming video games back then. I actually did make video games, but really? Just like, yeah, on like basic, 10, line 10, go to 20, like these kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
I remember doing actually one assignment, and it was grade 6. When, like, for me, grade 6 was like there was like a few computers in in a room in the school, and that's it. Like, and they were Commodores. That's how old I am. And for a project, for an assignment, I handed in a computer game that was one of these text adventures: go north, go east, pick up this, use this. And it was very basic, but the teacher did not believe I made it. She did not. And she literally made me sit down and, without looking at anything, type it again. And I did. I'm like, okay, do this. And she's like, oh, okay, I guess you did do it. Yeah. So
I'm sure you got a good grade.
Into it. Yeah, I was always, I don't remember, but I was always into gaming of all sorts. And I'm always like a huge collector of all the consoles. I love when it pushes what's possible. Like, so when the Wii came out, I was all over that. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I mean, it's not cool anymore, but it was at the time because it was different. And I love Nintendo for doing that. They always do something different with how they approach gaming. And I love board games that do something different. So I'm always pushing any partner I'm with to be like, okay, that's cool. How do we make a twist on that? Because we've seen that before. How do we make that a bit different or something a bit unique so it stands out? And that's what excites me.
And I'm sure the more as you got into the hobby, obviously you were getting more inspiration from other games. And for both of you guys, were there some like profound, even favorite games still to this day that sort of defined your hobbyistic journey?
Hobbyistic journey, that's really interesting. I mean, like every once in a while I'll run into a game and I'll just be like, this mechanism is brilliant, and it's always trying to chase something unique. I mean, that was one of the things that I think we were both happy with about Mountain King, was that the Cascade felt unique and new to us, and so we were pretty excited when we stumbled onto that.
And it was so great because that was in the very first prototype we had that. And so immediately upon playing, everyone enjoyed it on the first playtest, which is so rare. We immediately were like, this is the weirdest playtest ever because it was good on a first playtest. Usually there's so much so the rest of the playtesting was just kind of just balancing and figuring out what, had to go where. It was weird.
But the core mechanism, from day one, everybody loved the core mechanism, which, is something that almost never happens.
Yeah, it was great.
Well, there's so many mechanisms going on in the Hall of the Mountain King. So when you're playtesting something like that from the first prototype, Do you have the whole outline of the game that you're working through, or do you just start with a little piece that you introduce to people?
No, I don't think we had like statues in the first version of it. I don't think we knew that we were doing that yet, but we knew we were. There was definitely resources on the board. There was resources from this, so we knew you were building. We didn't know. I don't think we knew why you were building yet, and I don't even know if we had hammers yet or not.
I don't think we had hammers yet. I thought the statues were pretty early. They might have been in the first play test.
Really, but not with the same. Not this. I wonder. That's a good question, but there's you know what I mean. But the concept of building polyominoes using different resources was right from day one. And so then it was just like balancing the polyominoes, and they're like, oh, you know what, people want to go, and then was trying to figure out so what are we doing this for? Are we just exploring? I think we did say we wanted to get to the middle. I think we had that right from the beginning.
Well, I mean, for the longest time, everybody was playing on their own personal board.
Like, right up until we signed it. It was a solo multiplayer solitaire game.
Really?
Everyone had their unique mountain shape that they played on, and you built onto your own little unique board. Right. Yeah, that was right. The very first. That's exactly right. Yeah,
and
you're right.
The goal was to try to bring the statues from the bottom as far up as possible.
And so when we pitched it, everyone liked it when we pitched it. And then as we're pitching it, because we had thought about this, we said, we're working on a way to make it all on one board. And they're like, oh, that's interesting. The only challenge to that is that it's still fairly multiplayer solitaire in a way from because you're on your own. And that's only because we realized when playing it that if we put people together, made it a smaller mountain. We see this in some feedback or some reviews. We're like, oh, I wish the mountain was smaller so we kind of get in each other's way more. When we tried that, what happens is players would, because if they're kind of playing jerky and they want to do this, because I want to, which, you know, that's a play style. They start to kind of cut somebody off, especially in a 3-player. If both side players decide to cut that middle player off, that player has literally nothing they can do.
Terrible experience.
There's nothing. They're blocked. They literally have now hardly any spaces to do anything, and they're like, their game is over. And it was a terrible experience. And so then we're like, oh, let's put maybe some rubble in between players to make it so that it's harder they can do it, but they really have to try for it. And that worked really well until we realized that we needed a player count from 2 all the way to 5. And so now that made our boards really weird because they'd be if we could have had 2 full boards, then that's what we would have wanted to go with. Like, here's the 5-player board. Here's the 4. Here's the 3. Here's the 2. And then I think it would have been a tiny bit better. So we had to figure out a solution. That was one of the problems that the publisher gave to us, is like, guys, we don't have budget for 2 boards. That's too much. How do we get it to 1 board? We're like, oh, shoot. So that's when we had to figure out how to separate things and make enough so that people wouldn't cut each other off.
Yeah,
in a bad way.
In a bad way. If you want the tighter experience playing a full 5 players, you can still get that. There are players that can get crunched more so than the others, and in a 3-player game as well. Like the 3 and the 5 are the ones where you're gonna get that little crunchier, little tighter experience, versus the 2 and the 4 are more loosey goosey.
Yeah, I think it ended up as a really good balance. Because definitely the 2-player games, there's a bit more space. And then playing a 3-player game, I found I still had plenty of space to work around at the beginning, but it came down right towards the end. The other 2 players had built right up to the center of the mountain, and it was positioned in such a way that there was not a single square that I could legally build on, which was frustrating because I wanted to get that last statue there, but it was just a good measure of angst, I think, that was incorporated into the game.
And
the interaction is more of a race. Like you try to evaluate the how fast can you get to the top middle section to kind of secure your foothold, and then also get a pedestal up there, et cetera, et cetera. So that's an interesting. I like that part of the game where it's like how fast you want to go up there versus. Like if you do but you might go up there but have no statues, and maybe one of your partners actually came over to your area and grabbed a nearby statue that you could have had, and now you don't have it. So there's there's an interesting balance there. I like.
Do you guys have some like high scoring strategy tips, some insider information for Mountain King?
Well, that's one of the things that I think we both really appreciate about the game is it's like we've seen people do the quality is over quantity in terms of digging,
Hearthstone.
like the Hearthstone strategy. But then, players that can get a lot of statues deep in the tunnels, you can get a lot of points there too. So it's like
you build out of stone a lot.
yeah. So it's one of those things that I don't think that there's like both of those strategies are viable.
I'll say one strategy that's not viable is going for Great Halls early.
Great Halls early.
Great Halls was meant more as a something to do if you're pinched out of the top spots. If you can, and like I can't get up there, well then I'll focus on this. But going for them early you're not helping yourself, because it's the amount of points you get from it is not worth as much as it is to get a couple of statues higher up.
Yeah, I would say fight for the big points on the statues, and if, as Jay says, if you can't get to the best spots, then try to see what you can salvage out of a Great Hall strategy.
I didn't think of the Great Halls as a backup. If you get crunched like into a corner, you can't get to the middle of the mountain. That's genius. I'm gonna have to implement that my next game. See how it goes.
Now, the most interesting story to tell about in the Hall of Mountain King, I believe, is the co-op. Because when we signed the game, they said, okay, we're going to sign the game, but we just we want a co-op mode for it as well.
Yeah, no problem. That'll be easy.
Okay, sure. Co-op. Yeah. Sure. Fine. Easy. And so while we kind of got this game design in record time from comparatively to other games that I've worked on.
It was like 6 months from inception to signing, which for us is really quick.
And
I bet.
The co-op made us pull our hair out. It was so hard to figure this out because there's a couple of different types of co-op, right? You have the beat the game. So there's an actual thing that you, boom, I beat the game, I did it. And then there's just a get the highest score. And so from what we've learned from solo gamers, I'm not a big solo gamer slash co-op, is that co-op and solo, they don't like just a beat the score thing. They want a definitive, I beat it. I beat the game. And so we went through so many different variations and so much printing and cutting.
We spent the most time on our strongest idea for a long time was a concept of lava flowing out of the middle of the mountain. And that you would have to worry about the lava flow. I mean, and that was neat, but it had so many challenges of like, well, what are we using the different quality of materials for when we're just fighting lava? And
how does lava affect Hearthstone versus Iron versus Stone? And we had ideas. And
the biggest one that we ran into was that the team would succeed best if one player essentially sacrificed their area to the lava, so all the lava would go to their area so that everybody else had an opportunity to flourish, and then you could win. But like again, one person's having a terrible time while everybody else is winning.
Because that was our trying to figure out how to make the AI of the lava work. It couldn't be pure AI because it's just random, and it never worked as just absolute random. There needs to be some decision when you place it, and so then now players have to make a decision which way does the lava flow. And as Graeme said, most people would play it so that they would just funnel it into one area, and that kind of sucked for that one player. So the lava didn't work. Then we tried other things, like there's a dragon in the mountain that's moving around, or a monster of some sort that's doing things. What was some other ideas we had? I can't remember, but there's so many different ideas we tried, and I was literally going to give up and just tell Helena, I am done. We cannot figure it out. I literally told Graeme that. I'm like, well, I'm done, buddy. And Graeme's like, I got one more idea. I'm like, whatever, figure it out.
And that was the one that we ended up published with, was the Cursed Mountain.
And so it's a tricky one because it makes everything harder to do, because you have all these curses that you can't do this, you can't do that. And so some people like it because it is a huge puzzle and it adds all these wrinkles and it's a great solo. And some people said they didn't like it because I can't do all the fun things I want to do, because you're saying I can't do this and I can't do that. But that's part of the puzzle. If you like solo games, I think you'll like it. If you're a big fan of In the Hall of the Mountain King, it's up in the air of whether you'd like the solo, I guess. I don't know. But I think it's clever because it's so tense as a solo game. But my absolute favorite way to play came from the concept of this, because the best part to me in all of our solo playtesting, even with the lava and all the different types, was the fact that if me and Graeme built tunnels and we got them to connect, because normally you can't connect, but it's a cooperative game. If we got them to connect, Then we share our supply. Like anything that's on our trolls, like resources on our trolls, that's my resources. But anything on our supply, that get put extra into our little, whatever, is it called something or just
supply?
You
get it in your storage, off of your trolls into your storage. Yeah.
Then either of us have access to that. So now I can feed that other player's stuff. I can go, hey, I'll get some Hearthstone for you and put it here, and then you can use that Hearthstone on your thing.
And the sharing of the workshops.
So if you had access to the workshop, I can use yours, you can use mine. And it was so fun. That part was so fun. And so the favorite mode is a team mode. And the team mode, you play on 2 teams, me and Graham versus you and someone else. And so we are still playing the cooperative aspect of trying to connect ours together, but still trying to get statues as high as possible. You're not playing with the Cursed Mountain at all. It's just the actual game of In the Hall of the Mountain King, 2v2. And it is awesome.
It's a lot of fun.
Huh. So you're saying that you enjoy the cooperative team mode as opposed to just standard competitive?
It is competitive, but just team 2v2.
Sure, but I mean, as opposed to the original game.
Yeah, that's
my
favorite way.
Because you get you get the competitive aspect of racing for the top, trying to get your statues in the right place, but you have this alternative method. If you can connect to your partner, which you might not, but you're motivated to, you get all this extra cool strategy ideas of like, how do we share each other's stuff?
It's a neat new puzzle on how to work together. It is a heck of a lot of fun. It's one of those things that we rarely see discussed in reviews. And every once in a while someone will be like, someone will play team mode and they'll be like, oh my gosh, team mode is so fun. And we're like, yes, we know, play team mode. It's really good. But you need 4, exactly, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you only have 2 or 3, and then so it's like you've got to plan for a team mode night.
Judging from your reaction, I take it you have yet to play team mode.
Yes. Well, I have yet to even get the Cursed Mountain. It's on my list.
You don't need it. You don't need the Cursed Mountain.
Oh, you don't? Oh, it's just a mode within the first game?
It's just mode within the base game.
Yeah. I guess I didn't read far enough through the rulebook to that point.
You did not.
It's on the back, isn't it? Or the second last page?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go do a citizen's arrest on a couple people, then teach them the game, and we'll get a 4-player game.
It's awesome. Going. Yeah, you'll love it.
Huh. Well, here's a question for you. Why trolls instead of dwarves?
Well, again, driven by the song. So in the original song, In the Hall of the Mountain King, it comes from a larger work of the Peer Gynt symphonies. And in the song In the Hall of the Mountain King, Peer Gynt has wandered into a mountain which is occupied by a bunch of trolls. And so even though we don't have Peer Gynt, the character himself, in the game, though I must admit, every once in a while I'm like, what would it be like to add the Peer Gynt module? But
it's a 1 versus many game all of a sudden.
Yeah, exactly. Finding Peer Gynt in the okay, let's talk later. But we figured since the song originally had trolls under the mountain, why don't we honor the origins of the song and also make it a game about trolls?
So I actually thought about researching the song before this podcast, but then I thought, no, if there's any little gems for the background of this, these guys are going to be able to tell me about it. So thank you for that insight. Now I understand.
That was the other thing is I literally grew up on classical music. Like classical music was played all the time in my house. So yeah, so that was one of the reasons that I loved this song as well, because it's a classic of classical music. It's brilliant.
So besides the song, then, were there actual games or any other mechanisms that directly influenced In the Hall of the Mountain King, or was it just this conglomeration of random inspiration?
I'm always a fan of polyomino games, so I don't know if it was me that did polyominoes or you started with polyomino. I don't remember. I remember we had early discussions because we had found the Cascade idea early and we both liked it, but we just needed a reason to do it. A little bit what to do with all the resources. And so then we were like, okay, well, we need to we decided that we wanted to turn it into have a spatial puzzle, because we also understand that people tend to like spatial puzzles. And so I think that was where we were like, well, what about polyominoes? They're so hot right now.
What's really weird is if you go on Board Game Geek, it's just the fact that both you guys have referred to this now as a polyomino game. Last I checked, Board Game Geek doesn't have polyomino listed as one of the mechanisms or anything that's included.
That's right. Yeah,
I feel like polyomino is it's a fairly recent thing, and I don't think they update those entries very often. Like,
Really?
Category, yeah.
I would have thought that with Isle of Cats, it would be somewhere up there.
Well, you would think at this point.
I literally was trying to, like, I was looking for more. Like, I like polyomino games. What other polyomino games? And I'm like, oh, there's no way to search for polyomino games.
No, you can't search for polyomino games. But at this point, I feel like with Patchwork and everything that Uwe's done, like there's so many amazing polyomino games. Baron Park being one of my absolute favorites. Like, I agree with you. Like, I feel like polyomino placement should be its own mechanism.
Maybe there's just some sort of stigma around it, because probably everyone thinks of Tetris if they aren't really familiar with good polyomino games the first time.
Maybe.
What about the cascade system? Have you experienced that in like any other games at this point? Has anyone stolen that from you guys?
I don't know. We've stolen from ourselves, and we're working on other games that implement that but nothing's signed yet. So we're
nothing signed. I remember when we were working on Mountain King, there was someone that showed me a game that wasn't cascading this exact same way. I'm trying to remember what it was. I want to say it was thematically, I thought it was either the same as the Hanging Gardens or tangentially related to the Hanging Gardens, where you were placing tiles and there would be tokens that could like fall either to the left or to the right, and that would change the victory points you would get. So it had a similarity of Cascade, but that it was something that someone else had developed independently, and that was the closest thing I had seen to a true Cascade. But like, there's other games I always can never remember if it's there's other games that use like, you play a card on top of another card, like just in a stack, and it's like you're reactivating the entire stack every time you contribute to that. Deus, or I can't remember, there was one that did that, and those things are interesting. So does it split across? No, but is it the same concept? Yeah, you're hitting the same thing and getting more for doing it.
Suburbia has something like that. It's probably too loose of a connection, but all of these different tiles that have abilities that relate to other tiles getting placed. So every time you place a new tile, you have to go back and check all the other ones and see if something lines up for a new effect to trigger.
Yeah.
But not quite the same, I guess. I have this theory, unrelated to that in board games, good games break their own rules well. And I guess what I mean by this is, what makes a game is that there's a set system, an established group of rules that everyone agrees to play by. Right. So everything's governed by that. If you're playing a worker placement game and there's a spot that's open, someone takes it, the rule is now that someone else can't go to that spot usually. An example of, I think, a game that does not do this well is actually Furnace. Now, I say that loosely because I really like Furnace. Have you guys played Furnace?
I've seen some reviews.
Okay. So it's engine building just stripped down to the core. That's not a bad way at all. That's really why I like it, because it's just pure engine building. What doesn't work is there's these optional player powers you can play with that, since there's so little to mess with in the game, those player powers kind of break the game. They break the rules too much so that it doesn't work well. Where I'm going with this is the spells, I think, implement that beautifully in the game. You've got all these different circumstances that can pop up with these. After you activate them 3 times, they go away, but they're just little ways to tweak the rules of the game. So what inspired that? Like, where did that come from?
I think it's from that aspect of, the game. I don't know if it ever gets samey, but it could get samey without some sort of tiny elements of chaos or tiny elements of uncertainty or things that you're saying break the rules or whatnot. And so just by adding a layer of these 3 things are available right now, and we went through a bunch of different versions of how do we do they stay for the entire game, how do they cycle out, and what we ended up on, I think, is the best way, where they stick around for a bit, so that if they flush too fast, it's too much reading and too much like what is it now? I can't even remember. So they stick around long enough that you can get used to them, and then I better get it before somebody, like, it's good. It's a nice feeling. And yeah, I think that was just the impetus of it. That was just like, how do we add a little bit more a distraction of what you're doing? Because now I think early on we knew we wanted pretty early on we knew we wanted a rune or a magic resource that we wanted to collect, and what do we do with it?
Yeah, those, like, I remember the spell cards. at least in my mind, I don't know if I ever vocalized this with Jay, but I took a lot of inspiration from the buildings that you build in Puerto Rico, because I feel like that's another game that breaks its own rules well. If everybody's playing by the same rules, but I got the wharf, so I get extra victory points when I captain and stuff. And it was one of those, like, that was where I felt like we wanted to get to, of like, gives you the opportunity to break the rules a little bit in your favor, but keeps you on your toes because it's not there forever. So you've got to learn when to capitalize, and you need to get those runes so that you can so that you have that opportunity when something is to your advantage.
And we even split the magic spells into also away from workshops, because we also have workshops that could have been spells, but they have a bit more permanency and a bit more you can count on it because it's mine. Once I get there, it's my workshop. I can always now I can have a strategy about turning iron into heartstone. So now I can get a lot of iron because I know I can turn it into heartstone. So that permanency was necessary. It still breaks rules because I can do that and you can't.
Sure.
But it I think those two are work together nicely, and it involves the spatialized. Like, you have to get there. You have to get to a workshop location in order to make it happen, which is a nice differentiator.
It's just strategies within strategies. I love how you can adapt just according to what's going on in the game.
Yeah, but that's what I really like about the workshops, is the ability to build a game strategy around what are the workshops that are available and that I get.
Yeah.
And here's a funny backstory, is that Rado, the reviewer Richard Ham, when he reviewed it, his misinterpretation of how the workshops worked during the preview, like during Kickstarter preview, ended up changing the rule to make it that way. Because we're like, oh, that's actually more fun to do it that way. Actually,
that's awesome.
Our rule was just that however many sides of the workshop you're adjacent to, that's your power. And his rule was that however many of anybody's touching the side, that's how many all people get. So if I have 2 and you have 1, each of us get 3, a power of 3.
That's right. And I forgot that. I totally forgot about that. But yeah, we both like that so much.
We change them. Like, that is cool, because it actually if you got 2 sides, I'm really motivated to get in there, because now I'm going to get a power of 3.
Yeah.
So really it motivates that interaction, that kind of working together more so. So we I love that. That's great.
That reminds me of the other, like, it's funny how there were these essentially playtesting mistakes that made the game better. Because the other major one was when we first brought the prototype out, when you played a cascade, we gave you everything, and we gave like all the reseurces, and
into
you just
your storage,
kept it into your own storage. And when we were playing with one of our friends, one of our playtesters,
Sean Haggis,
Sean Ross, who made the card game Haggis, he was putting the resources on his trolls so that he could keep track of what he had gained.
And we were like, you don't have to do that. That's like, he goes, no, I need to keep track of it. I can't keep track of what I see. Okay, sure.
Yeah, because that way he knew what he had grabbed and so he wasn't getting confused. And then we watched him do it, and we're like, but wait a minute. What if what if you couldn't get more things until you spent those things? And it just and again it raised the game again, because we're like, now it has so much more of an interesting puzzle, because now it's like, when do I hit the next cascade, because I got these resources that are going to go to waste. And you want to use all your resources. If you can use 100% of your resources on your trolls before activating them again, that's like that feels really good. Yeah. So playtesting mistake once again improved the game.
Jay, do you have a section now in your Fail Faster journal where let people play your game wrong and let that be inspiration to make it better?
Yeah, no, but it's part of my Fail Faster online game design program to talk about that. Like, if people are playing in a certain way, don't just correct them. Like, just why are they playing in that way? Is it actually more interesting? Is it more fun to play in that way? Follow that.
I don't think I've ever heard that before in other games. I love the fact that it's just people playing a game wrong makes it better. It just gives inspiration to do things.
I've seen some people play and interpret how a market works differently, but how they interpret it is like, why are you interpreting that way? Because it felt more intuitive. I'm like, okay, sometimes that's better if it's more intuitive. If it feels like this is how you should do it. You might have seen there's a very famous picture of, not famous, it's like a meme of like a paved path like this, and then there's a dirt path diagonally across, and this is the intended design, but this is how users use it. They go across diagonally. They don't care about the path, and that's like, what are users doing? Follow them and make the game that way. So you should have had a paved path on a diagonal is what you should have had.
Well, let's talk about the components / the overall aesthetic of the game, which I love. I would say 37% of the reason I like the game so much is just the overall look. And I think that's important. Good games have great art. What's that, Graeme?
Is that the Kickstarter version that you've been playing, or is it the retail version you've been playing?
It's the retail version, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Nice.
Yep.
Good wood
does the
bits.
Kickstarter look better?
No, it just has plastic bits. It's got game trays to store everything, so it's easier to start playing.
Yeah, no, I don't have the game trays, but I do like the wooden hammers at least.
Yeah.
Well, and all the cubes are wooden.
Yeah,
I guess it's just the little
plastic things in the
Yeah.
Well, the resources are still wooden, but they're shaped wooden. The hammers and the carts are plastic.
Right.
Do you still have but does it still have the massive metal coins? The retail version?
No, I don't think.
No,
so.
it's not. No,
I don't think so.
That's also deluxe.
Yeah, that's right. I had to think about that and picture it. There's so many games now with so many different coins that all get mixed up. About the artist, though, it's weird on Board Game Geek. It has the two people listed as the artist, and then no graphic designer listed.
It should. It's
what's
Josh.
with that?
It's Josh.
It
Capel.
is Josh. Okay, so
100%,
it's just some typo.
Yeah. Anything done by Helena's company, Burnt Island Games, or
Josh is going to have
gotcha.
Board Game. It's Josh Capel. That's their only graphic designer.
Well, both of those guys, Josh Capel and I have no idea. Kwanchai Mariah. Yeah, between the two of them, I think they have like 250 credits on Board Game Geek.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah,
it's a pleasure to have a game with his art on it. I love it.
So, how much influence did you guys have with what the game would look like? Did Josh and Kwanchai send you things?
No, funny enough, when we pitched it, and maybe it's just more akin to the sensibilities of Graeme and I, or maybe just me because I made the first round of this prototype, I found really cute trolls for our art. And so it actually kind of felt kind of cute when you played. And immediately Helena was like, just so you know, we're not going cute. I'm like, okay.
Helena, that was a really good choice. Thank you for making that executive decision. Wow.
Though, like the trolls that Kwanchai made I think they're gorgeous. Like each one, I love the fact that like each set of trolls has their own unique almost culture about them in the accessories that they have, and as they go up in the tiers from tier 1, 2, and 3, they become more ornate. Like they're really neat to look at.
Yeah, I mean it's phenomenal.
One of my favorite things is I am not an artist, but I would say I have a decent eye for layout and functionality with graphic representation of the game I'm trying to get people to play test.
I look at that.
And I'm always tickled when the end product of a game incorporates some idea that I had. And there's a few of those things in this game of like, you just went with exactly what I wanted. That's cool. All right, cool. All right. I guess I know what I'm doing to some degree. That's nice.
I was going to ask you about that because I've noticed in a couple of games where it has Jay Cormier listed as artist. I'm like,
no.
What's going on there?
It shouldn't. It'd be a mistake if it is. I literally haven't done any art for anything.
I'll go back and look at
tell
some
me
of the ones.
It
might have been Acrotiri, maybe not.
Definitely not. That was Chris Williams. He was awesome too. Very fortunate.
Yeah. Okay.
Very fortunate to be partnered with so many awesome artists. I'm so happy.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great result. I almost just want to stand Mountain King up on my shelf. I don't care how many spaces it takes up that other games would stand there. I just want to look at the front of the cover.
It's nice.
It's nice.
And then we actually got asked to help develop the Fall of the Mountain King.
I was just going to ask about that. Yeah. Well, what's your connection with that then? Because you're not listed as designers, either of you.
Just developers.
Just developers. Gotcha.
Yeah. Just developers.
Yeah, well,
so
whatever.
They brought us the game and we pitched it. And we had a whole bunch of ideas of how to, tweak it to something that we would like. And they fortunately agreed with a lot of the things we were saying and changed it here and there. And It ended up being really cool. From the beginning, we liked the concept of I don't know if you know anything, but they got this ancestral thing where you play things and activate in a path, and it's a really neat activation thing. And that's kind of, there's a storyline, but also the cascading thing has been replaced by this, a neat way of how you activate your actions. It's really neat. Neat. That part is feels like it's a brotherhood in the Hall of the Mountain King, and then the story fits with regards to the gnomes and the trolls and whatnot is nice. But this one's more competitive, it's area control type game, so you're definitely getting in each other's way a lot more.
Yeah, I've heard it described as like a Blood Rage-esque kind of game. Would you say that's true?
You know what? I haven't played Blood Rage.
It's not my favorite game. I played it like twice. I'm not big on area control, so
this, I haven't played it either, so I don't know exactly. It is definitely area control. So that's
definitely area control.
And there is pushing each other around. You definitely are. I don't know. Do you attack each other, or no? You only ever attack.
No, it's all indirect. Yes. You're simply jockeying for position within the mountain, and then the only actual combat that you do is against the gnome invasion.
Okay, gotcha. But there's still a single winner. Then it's not like a cooperative game.
No, it's not a cooperative game. You are trying to essentially, like, because we all know what happens, that the trolls lose their mountain and then they come back for in the Hall of the Mountain King. It is literally, you are trying to fail gloriously in that if whoever brings the most glory will be the leader of the trolls in Exodus.
Inverse Mountain King.
At the time, they don't know that they're going to lose, but that is the outcome. So you're you're essentially trying to lead a glorious resistance, unknowing that you were going to be losing it all anyway.
And I gotta ask, did they ask them, because I never even followed up with this, did they ask those designers to make a solo and co-op mode for their game?
I can't remember if it has a solo mode or not, to be honest.
That'd be brutal. I'd love to hear that backstory too.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, how about we close this off with one final question for you guys? Is there any other co-designing projects from the both of you we can look forward to seeing anytime soon?
You know, we've designed a bunch of games. We've pitched a bunch of games. I literally pitched a game this week, and then today, this morning, followed up with a demo to that same publisher because they liked the pitch and they got their team together and we played the game, and they're really excited about it. So I'm really excited about that one a lot. Very hopeful. And then we have some more designs that are just in the process of kind of getting made or ready to pitch, or we have pitched some and hasn't really come to fruition. Did we get anything? We haven't got anything else signed. No, nothing else has been signed.
No, nothing else signed yet. That's right. It's stuff in their infancy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will keep an eye out. Or actually, sure.
I mean, and if you ever in the mood for a team building exercise, we do have an escape room that we did together.
Yeah, we
an escape room that you designed.
Yeah,
a virtual escape room.
Yeah. During the pandemic, I partnered up with a team building company called Team Bonders out in Ontario, Canada, and pitched them as a concept of like, hey, what if we built this virtual escape room? Because they do team building stuff, but they were hurting for team building exercises during the pandemic because nobody's doing team building exercises. Sure. So we pitched them this, what about a virtual escape room where you do it, everyone does it from their own comfort of their home. So we had to use like audio video materials. We had to make all this, these concepts up, and they loved it. And so we made something, and they're still selling it today. We still get royalties on that today.
Wow. Where can I find that?
Teambonders.ca.com. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Team Bonders. Huh. Like it's like you have to pay, like it's an event. It's not, you can't just go and download it yourself. It's like
gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Fun fact, for 2 years in college, I actually worked at an escape room as one of the game masters and hosted everybody and reset everything. So
that is fun.
I am down for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Mr. J and Mr. Graeme, it has been an absolute pleasure having you guys on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time and providing us with some valuable insight and strategy tips in the Hall of the Mountain King.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's great to in the Hall of the Mountain King kickstarted in 2019, but it kind of came out at the beginning of 2020, which we all know what happened at the beginning of 2020. And so it kind of Yeah. It kind of, therefore, I believe fell a little under the radar from the, like it still is doing very well, but it still feels a little under the radar for a game that's ranked, I don't know, 500, 550, something like that.
555 last I checked.
There you go.
556 today.
Oh man.
So it dropped one overnight.
Oh no. Well, I thought it just went back up. Yeah, see, that's the thing. This game was under my radar too. I heard about it, I think from Tom Vassel's 2021 top 100 list. That was the first I'd ever heard anything about it. I was like, that sounds cool. I looked it up, like, this looks cool. And I ordered it. I played it, like, okay, this is cool. And I'm still just really surprised that it's only 555. I assumed it was something like that where COVID or something messed it up and just less people know about it.
Yeah, a little bit. So maybe now that we're on the other side of it, maybe it'll, I don't know if games can start getting traction or not. I don't know how.
Well, I do think that there's been a bit of an uptick because the Fall of the Mountain King Kickstarter gave people the option of buying in to Mountain King at the same time, the in the Hall of the Mountain King. I think that we have actually been seeing a bit of an uptick because people are getting their fall copies and they probably bundled it within the Hall of the Mountain King. And so it's getting a bit, like, it's not like a huge bump, but I am starting to see it in hitting news feeds a little more, seeing it in like the Facebook groups.
Right.
Just I've been seeing a few more people play it, and so it's been fun to see a bit of a resurgence.
Yeah, the first episode of this podcast, that was our featured game of the week, actually. So
I gotta go listen to it.
Let's see if that gets it out there. The audio quality isn't as great as it's slowly become, but it's there.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for having us on.
Again,
great.
Thank you guys very much. I look forward to talking again someday soon. Who knows?
I'm sure there will be another game we can talk about.
I love that. Thanks for tuning in, folks. This has been the Tabletop Shop podcast featuring our special guest, Jay Cormier and Graeme Jahns. It was much discussed this episode, but I highly recommend you try out their game in the Hall of the Mountain King. Do it. Just do it. Give it a try. You'll like it. Also, if you like this content and want to see more, please leave us a like and subscribe, and maybe even leave a comment for some other special guest you'd like to see on the show. Thanks, and keep on playing games.